The word counterfeit is defined by the Oxford Dictionary as a fraudulent imitation of something else, or a forgery. There have been counterfeits since the beginning of the civilized world. In the Roman times, bandits and thieves used to forge their own currency out of lesser materials to pass as real to unsuspecting commoners. This continued for centuries, and in the 1800s, there was so much fake and counterfeit money in the United States that in 1865 the Secret Service was founded, and its primary mission was eradicating counterfeit money. In the 1900s, the consumer goods market really got going, and today some of the most notorious and often faked products are no surprise: Louis Vuitton handbags and Nike shoes. But in my world, the world of cameras, fakes and counterfeits are thankfully pretty darn uncommon. Largely because a finished hard good electronic is made up of many different components, and the quality and performance differences are generally distinguishable by the human eye. But that still doesn't stop some companies from trying and attempting to fleece unsuspecting customers. And now we get to our story. The case of the two Sony camcorders that I have here. Style-wise, quite similar. Both fold-out screens, one's purple, one's silver. Can you spot the fake from the first glance? I'm going to go through 3 key benchmarks that I use in evaluating whether a product is fake. Number 1, finish build quality. Number 2, Sony logo and the model number, if it exists. And number 3, performance. This unit weighed 4 ounces and this unit weighed 6 ounces. The second thing you want to look at when you're looking at the build quality is actually the finish of the camera. So you'll notice that this one on the left, the purple one, actually has a very glossy finish. And although it's silver, you can see it's not very glossy. It's just this silver guy is more plasticky looking. And when I turn them around, you'll see a big old Sony logo here on the front. And there is an absence of a Sony logo on the front of this unit. There is one here. So you can see there's a pretty big difference. There's another big difference in the fact that the Sony lettering is actually raised off of the unit here. And on this unit, it's actually printed on the camcorder. I'm going to bring a different Sony model out here just to show you another camcorder and compare the style of the Sony logo. Very similar. Another difference is, by and large, a lot of Sony cameras and camcorders use rechargeable batteries. Not all of them, but most of them. And when I open up the battery compartment, the silver one has AA tray, and the purple one has a rechargeable battery. And it was actually a Sony battery. That's another giveaway. A lot of the times the cheaper units, if they do have rechargeable batteries, are going to have just a generic battery inside, not an actual Sony branded battery. So that's another quick way to tell. You also notice this is very plasticky feeling, and the inside has a copyright date of 2005, made in China. Made in China is not a giveaway for where the product was, if the product was produced by Sony or a major manufacturer or not. A lot of products are made in China. So you can't use that entirely. One thing you can use is the serial number, and as you can see here, we have a very long serial number versus a shorter serial number here that is approximately approximately 7 digits. And it has ITE tested, made in China, Sony Corporation, on a sticker, which is very common. On the older units, I'm going to pull out the other Sony camcorder here real quick. You'll actually see that the serial number is actually inscribed onto the camcorder itself. So that's another way you can kind of tell if it's real. Okay, and continuing on with the model number, oftentimes the Sony model number is going to have a MHS or a DCR in the front, followed by the model number. So in this case, it's MHS-CM5. And if you go into your old friend Google and type that in, you'll get a bunch of Sony Direct, Sony.com products, which is generally a good sign that the product actually exists to be referenced against. So you can compare the size and the specs, if you so desire, to Sony's website and just make sure that it's authentic. In this case, the model number is a DDV C330, which is not a real Sony model number. And if you type that into Google, you find a couple other fakes for sale on eBay. So they do exist. This particular model does exist out there. And clearly a few were sold. Unfortunately, people thought they were getting the real thing, but they get something completely different. Going back to build quality, another thing that you're able to tell really quickly by just looking at the lenses of these two units is the Sony purple one. The CM5 actually has an authentic glass lens. And this other unit here, which we will now, after going through just briefly, can firmly say with confidence that the silver one is the counterfeit, has a pinwheel type lens, which is often seen in cheaper models of cameras and camcorders, especially by like Vivitar. Produces generally pretty poor quality and non-zoomable photos and images. Lastly, when you open the two units and you turn them on, which I'll do here, we'll go to the purple one and turn it on. That quick initial step, and the unit turns on basically immediately. And you go to menu, and most of Sony's menus look very similar between cameras and camcorders, and just by quickly looking, I can see that visually this looks like a Sony menu. So some of this comes with time and looking at a lot of different models like I have, because I've sold dozens of different Sony cameras and camcorder models in the past 15 years. I can pretty quickly see if something is legitimate or not. That model looked good. Let's take a look at the silver one. Oh, wow. That looks pretty poor, and immediately goes to this kind of janky looking display. I don't even think that's an LCD display. And it's not really in focus either. And it just looks cheap. Whereas with the Sony model, when you look at the menu, it actually looked. And if you want to get really into the nitty-gritty, Sony's of this era often had a dual Memory Stick Pro Duo / SD card slot. This one also has a dual Memory Stick Pro Duo / SD card slot. Right here. Whereas this fake Sony only has an SD card slot. Sony is where I've seen most of the fake products over the years. In fact, I would say 98% of the products that I've seen that have been faked have been Sony. So most of the time, if you're looking at what looks to be a real Panasonic or Canon or Nikon, it probably is, unless they exhibit some of the character flaws that our fake here does. And lastly, really what we want to look at here is performance. So when we open up the units and we actually take a video, oh wow, that's clunky. Okay, just started the video here. Let's flip it around. So now I'm going to video myself. Hello there. This is the Sony DDV C330, aka the Imposter. And this is the Sony IMHS CM5, which is the purple one. And hopefully the video quality on this looks quite a bit better. So there it is. The real, the fake. The good, the bad. Does this fake work? Yes. Do I feel good about using the fake? Absolutely not. It's just like wearing a pair of fake Nike shoes. No one else may know the difference, but you know, and deep down,
It really hurts. Goodbye, fake.